vaccines and lessons from pandemic. What I aim to do at the end is to give you a historical perspective and the scientific advancements. So as a student of science, we are dwelling into technical aspects, but also we should know how the field emerged and what are the future challenges and future opportunities for us. So I'm coming back to virology after a decade. So I tried to do as much justice I could. It's a very broad topic, but please bear with me as we go on. So the content of today's presentation, I'll be covering around 7 topics here. I'll start with the definition of virus and how it is classified and how the field of evolution, the virology, vaccinology evolved together, right from the prehistoric to the modern times. And the concept of immunity, active versus passive, which gives us power to fight all the diseases, particularly viruses in this context of the talk. I'll be sharing anecdotes from 2 important pandemics. We have witnessed one in our lifetime, which is the coronavirus. But in the past 100 years, there have been 3 pandemics of influenza, which had done a catastrophic loss to the human lives. And how, after the pandemic of influenza, the entire field of vaccine emerged across the world, including in India. And I will share some of the examples from my alma mater, NIV, which was at the forefront of curing an endemic disease, which is endemic to South India, certain parts of Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. And what are the challenges and career prospects for vaccines and industry and the business potential, which India has been at the forefront, which we witnessed in the past 2 years. So let's start with the definition of viruses. Simple definition is it's an obligate unicellular parasite. It's an intracellular parasite. There is no known virus which is present outside and outside life form. In terms of classification of virus, so coming back to the definition. So it's one of the smallest particle known to humans. Sometimes it can go as small as 18 to 20 nanometers. And as the viruses have been discovered, the researchers estimate that around 10 nanomillion, that is 10 followed by 30 zeros of individual virus exist on the Earth. This can range from the depths of Arctic, Antarctic ice to Himalayas, to the volcanic eruptions, to the soil or our surroundings, or even on our body. So when the viruses started to be discovered, the scientists wanted to classify them. And so far, we have been able to only classify 1,030 viruses based upon a simple characterization, which could be based on the size, the shape, the structure. And as we dwell further, the structures were discovered. They can be enveloped or they can be based upon the nucleic acid composition, RNA, DNA. In the preceding slides, I will dwell in further detail into it. So here you see in the slide, a bacteria which is like 2 micrometer. But as we go further down, HIV virus is 120 nanometers. The T4 bacteriophage, which is one of the earliest viruses which were discovered, it's a 225 nanometer. It's almost double the size. The largest known virus to humans is the pox virus, which can be seen from a normal microscope also. And the smallest is the parvovirus. So the parvovirus causes Coxsackie disease like conjunctivitis, and the pox virus causes smallpox or chickenpox. So in the late 19th century, when the viruses were starting to be discovered as they were the most horrific cause of deaths, Baltimore classified the viruses based upon their genomic content. So right now we are following this, and this classification still holds good. We have double standard group 1 viruses, which example is a smallpox virus. And then when we go further in the group 2, you see a single standard DNA virus, and it is a positive strand. When we say positive, it means it can be directly transcribed into mRNA. This is our high school biology, which we all know by heart, like it's transcription and translation. The group 3 viruses of this is very important childhood virus causing disease. It's a rotavirus, which causes rotavirus diarrhea, which has morbidity and mortality. And now many countries are trying to make a vaccine, including India is at the forefront of it. Then there is coronavirus. We don't need to know more about this. It was all in our minds and in the news, and we have lived through this pandemic. Then we have the negatively standard single stranded RNA viruses like measles, which is we all have been vaccinated when we were a child. And even now, some people get this measles infection as an adult. And then an important virus, HIV, which has been evolved since the late 1980s. And until now, we are struggling to find a vaccine to it. I will tell you why the HIV vaccine is a difficult thing to make, but we are going to be there soon. And then there is a double standard RNA virus, which is hepatitis B, which has successfully found a vaccine for us now in many countries. And India is the #1 producer of the hepatitis B vaccine. Having said that, no matter what group of viruses we classify, depending on the genetic material, the ultimate goal of the virus is to replicate and make its own progeny using its own proteins. So here you see, no matter what classification of virus it goes, there's an mRNA at the end. So when the researchers started to classify, it's just like how we classify the plants. If you remember our botany lectures from high school to your college, they're classified from realm to kingdom. Here I have given an example of a measles morbillovirus. So it belongs to the kingdom of orthonivavirus. And as we go further, the family is Paramyxoviridae. So most of the pox viruses come from this. Here specifically, I'm mentioning about the measles virus. The picture here shows the DNA viruses. At the first, I'll tell you the Astra virus, which looks like a star shape. And this is a double standard RNA virus. And one of the important disease, which is hepatitis, and herpes, is also among this classification. And if you go to RNA viruses, you would see a bullet-shaped structure right next to Orthomyxoviridae. So this is our rabies virus family. The researchers discovered this by simply observing under a microscope, an electron microscope, and what they found is a beautiful bullet-shaped structure. So the rabies viruses belongs to this family, and there is the retroviruses, the HIV virus, which also has a crown-like structure with an entanglement of the material inside. So just to give you some example here, apart from the genetic material, the viruses are also classified based upon their external structure. So either they can be enveloped or unenveloped. So here are some of the examples. What is more complicated is when it comes to RNA viruses. So these RNA viruses are now a very big concern because being RNA as genetic material, there is a chance of having a lot of mutations. And we have seen recently that how in coronaviruses and even now, new strains are emerging. So the importance of understanding this classification is when we are making vaccines, this information becomes very pertinent for us to understand how we can have a mechanism to evade these viruses to cause disease. So coming to the history of it, like it's a long journey for us to reach here. And from as early as in 1890s to we started the first tobacco mosaic virus, which was a plant virus which was discovered. And the scientists were Russian, and the father of virology is called Dmitry Avonsky. So at that time, there was no specific field of microbiology. It was all considered under classic microbiology. As we went ahead in the biochemical period, we started understanding the dynamics of reproduction of the viruses and its external structure. In 1910s to 1920s, a lot of research happened understanding how the viruses replicate, specifically the influenza virus. I will deal with influenza viruses at length in the preceding slides. So as we go on, now let's come into 2020s, we have successfully found a breakthrough using mRNA vaccine technology, which was awarded a Nobel Prize just 2 years ago. So we all think that the Western medicine is always at the forefront because we are living in a modern time, but it is a proud moment for India and China to understand that actually the concept of vaccination existed long before the Western medicine evolved. So this is actually a true classical fact from WHO website, that it was actually Chinese Buddhist monks who actually involved in vaccination as the earliest record. It was as old as 1000 AD. And coming to India, Ayurveda texts and Vedic scriptures have also shown that even before the modern germ theory of diseases was classified, in the 9th century itself, that the concept of vaccination or immunization happened. But was not as sophisticated as we know today. If you see in the picture, a person who is already having a disease, maybe in this case smallpox, is very close to a person, and then there is a virulation happening, an exchange of the genetic, the microbiological material or the virus is happening, and then that person can recover from that because he's been attenuated by virulation. On your right, you see, so this is one of the earliest documented of vaccination in India. It's called the Royal Vaccination at the Mysore Kingdom of Wadiyar II. So you see the female here wearing a pink blouse. She was the only survivor widow of the king, who later on, whose son became the king. And they chose this lady because she could survive from the disease of smallpox. So this has been documented on the Indian scriptures also, that right from the medieval period to, and in the ancient period, we had the concept of vaccination. It was just not classified in textbooks. So as the field of virology evolved and the practice of inoculation traveled from west to the modern day Turkey. And it was only in 1796, it was Edward Jenner who first inoculated an 8-year-old boy who was son of a cow maid with a cowpox sore. So cowpox is like a cousin of smallpox. What he noticed is the cow maids who are working close with the diseased cows, they never get sick with smallpox. So this was his observation. And he thought, what if I take scabs of those wounds from the cow and then put it in a person, and whether he or she will recover or not. And to his amazement, Joseph Phipps becomes the first human in the history ever to be vaccinated. And as this was still in the early 18th century, the first time the government endorsed the scientific work on vaccines was in 1806, where the French ruler Napoleon and the American president Thomas Jefferson actually gave a mandate to make vaccination as a part of their public health policy. And one of the modern fathers, and we have heard about this name very much, is Louis Pasteur. It was only in 1885, Louis Pasteur, while observing people around, he saw that rabies was a big concern at that time. And he invented rabies vaccine by giving a dose of the lab-grown strain in the spinal cord of rabbits and dogs to a boy called Joseph Mister. And he survived the rabies disease. And it is said that he was so touched by his creation, that he started worshipping the tomb of Louis Pasteur even after he died. So the vaccines was a success, and the procedure was quickly adopted in the world. And this was the first time when the scientific publications were available and people started exchanging information. So Pasteur also created the world's first laboratory-produced vaccine in cholera, using fall cholera in chickens. And the mRNA vaccine, what is available today, has a foundation from the work of Pasteur itself. So the dawn of vaccination started, and it was the Edward Jenner's first smallpox vaccine. And then in 1800s, the vaccination gains attraction with developed countries at that time, mainly the Europe and US, was actively involved in understanding how to combat the disease, and where the medicine was growing, medical education was growing, all the doctors were trained to understand how the disease progresses and how it can be prevented by inoculation. And 1967 was the first time the entire world, and with the help of WHO, launched the eradication of smallpox vaccine. And today, it is one of the few or only known viral disease which is completely eradicated. The strain is no longer available except for two countries, one in US, which is preserved in a very high security laboratory, and one is Russia. So as we progressed,